News Radio 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert. Happy Sunday, everyone, and happy last Sunday in April. Can you believe it's almost May 1st? And as you know, I periodically get an update from the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation, or Pike Off OTA, or No More Turnpikes. Randy Carter is on the phone with me tonight because he is the Director of Strategic Communication for these organizations and is here to bring us up to date on what is going on with, I better say it right one time, Access Oklahoma, which, as you know, Randy, I call Excess Oklahoma. How are you?
I'm just great. How are you, Glenn?
Great. Where are we on our turnpikes taking over Cleveland County?
Well, since the last time we talked, there has been a major development. I imagine anybody that keeps up with the news in Oklahoma is probably aware of it, but it's certainly worthy of mention. Secretary of Transportation Tim Gatz announced recently that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is stopping all work involved with the Access Oklahoma program. And the reason that they are doing so is because they have basically been locked out of the bond market, and the money they've been spending on what little bit they've been doing on Access since the first of the year has been coming out of their general revenue funds. And the general revenue funds are supposed to be used for maintenance and operations and paying down the existing debt. So we're quite pleased that all work has been stopped, but most of it actually probably had been stopped back in January. They were still continuing to do a little bit, from what we understand, on the east-west connector, which is basically Indian Hills Road that runs between Moore and Norman. So that's where that stands right now, and probably one of the main reasons that they have been locked out of the bond market is because of the lawsuits that have been filed against the Turnpike Authority. So,
refresh our memories about the active lawsuits.
Well, the first lawsuit that had some jurisdiction or some temporary finality, is that a term?
I love it.
Back in December, Judge Timothy Olson ruled that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, the Open Meetings Act, the Oklahoma Open Meetings Act, and that invalidated all of the access votes that the Turnpike Authority had voted on back in January and February. Those two specific meetings were adjudicated as to have violated the Open Meetings Act. And the Turnpike Authority has come back and filed an appeal on that, but that is still in the process. And with lawsuits in the process, the Council on Bond Oversight is not able to approve any new bond issuances for the Turnpike Authority, or for any state agency for that matter, if there's pending legal action against that particular agency. And in this case, it's against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. That suit, the Open Meetings Act violation suit, led to, because all those contracts that were let with different engineering firms back in January and February of last year, of 2022, since the Open Meetings Act violation case invalidated those anything the Turnpike Authority did with the Access Oklahoma program, that invalidated those contracts. And according to the lawsuit, the engineering firms are supposed to have returned any money paid out to them to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. Now, the Turnpike Authority did a little song and dance back in January, attempting to approve those payments, even though that didn't approve the contract or the program in general. So the attorneys that filed and won the open meetings case filed what's called a KTAM lawsuit. Basically, that is a group of citizens coming together as plaintiffs and demanding that those monies that paid to the engineering firms be returned to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. Of course, they're fighting that, and I was in a hearing, oh gosh, it's been a month or so ago, where there were dozens of attorneys from these different law firms, the different law firms representing the different engineering firms in the key TAM suit, as well as the attorneys for the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. They asked that Judge Olson, who was the judge that decided the open meetings case, they asked Judge Olson to recuse himself from this case, and the judge has since come back and not recused himself, has agreed to take the case in a quite a long answer to their question. And that, of course, all that stuff is available on oscn.net, which you can find every case going on in Oklahoma court there. But so that is in the process right now. The judge is staying on the case. We haven't heard at this point when any hearings have been scheduled or what the next step is in that key TAM case. But ultimately, if the attorneys prevail in that case, then those engineering firms will have to return all the monies that they were paid on those invalidated contracts.
Does that also include any real estate that was bought during that time period? I mean, is that the same kind of contracts, or is that something different?
No, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that real estate was bought specifically under the guise of under the heading of the Access Program. And I suppose you're right. That's an interesting point. We should pursue that. I think the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority can. I don't know what their guidelines are for purchasing property, but that's an interesting question. That's
well, for people that maybe aren't up to date on this, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority created a program called Access Oklahoma, and they drew a map, and they drew a way they wanted these turnpikes to go. They did not consult with any of the residents in those areas. It has been said that it could take out the homes of 600 families in that area. It was 3 different parts. And my question for you, Randy, is, I know you said, I wrote it down, wait a minute, temporary finality. So as I recall, Judge Olson ruled that the Turnpike Authority willingly violated the open meetings law. Willingly violated. That was the ruling. Yep. And yet, why, when some journalists are reporting this, are they saying allegedly willingly violated? Is that temporary thing, you think?
I think the reason I said temporary finality is because the case was decided, but that doesn't preclude them from going back and appealing the case. So,
but if he ruled that they willingly violated, then they willingly violated, correct?
Yes, that is the current ruling.
And so, because of that, that's why they've lost their bond access. And where is one of my favorite questions? Where is the Oklahoma Supreme Court when we need them to rule on this?
Well, at this point, there is a third case that's in front of the Supreme Court right now. Pike OTA and a number of other plaintiffs filed a lawsuit against the Turnpike Authority, stating that the 3 access legs in Cleveland County are not legal. They're not legally authorized. And supposedly, according to law, any turnpike that's built in Oklahoma needs to be legally authorized by the Oklahoma legislature, which brings up an interesting point that the Kickapoo Turnpike, if you go back and look on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's website, and they list a history of all the different turnpikes, and they state, for example, the Kilpatrick Turnpike, and after the name it says authorized by the Oklahoma State Legislature. And it says that on every turnpike that they have built, except for the Kickapoo. And after the Kickapoo, it says authorized by the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. So that brings up the question as to whether the Kickapoo Turnpike was ever even legally authorized, which means at this point, if it wasn't, they built that turnpike illegally.
Ooh,
Yeah. It's It's a tangled web. A tangled web.
Yes. Now we're going to
So,
have to take a commercial break, and
okay.
two things we will introduce as the Attorney General's interest in this, and a question I also would like for you to answer was, why is it legal for Tim Gatz to be the head of two different uh, agencies of Oklahoma when it was not legal for others to have two different paying jobs? I mean, that's like, I think they call that double dipping. So things for you to think about while we have to take a commercial break. I'm talking to Randy Carter. He is the Director of Strategic Communication for Pike Off OTA and Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. And you can also find more information on Facebook at No More Turnpikes. There is still a lot to discuss with him. The reason Randy got involved is that he picked up the paper one day and saw that this Access Oklahoma was going to go right through his house, and he had no idea about it. So what are the rights of the Turnpike Authority? Is that correct?
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. My living room is in the median if it goes through. We can talk more
well,
about
you'd
that.
have to mow that then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So we'll
But
come back and talk with Randy Carter some more about Access Oklahoma. Is it Excess Oklahoma? Well, if you ask me, that's what I would name it. You're listening to 1000 KTOK. I'm Gwin Faulconer-Lippert. Talking to Randy Carter. He's the Director of Strategic Communications for Pike Off OTA and the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. If you want some interesting reading, go to their Facebook page, No More Turnpikes, and it goes in quite detail the possibilities that could happen if, I guess, citizens are not paying attention. So, Randy, how did the Attorney General happen to get involved with this?
Well, the Attorney General thinks there may be, who knows? I can't speak for the Attorney General, but it seems to me that he thinks there may be some shenanigans going on over at the Turnpike Authority, because he called for a full investigative audit just recently. And we're quite pleased with that, because we're a little concerned about some of the things that we've been seeing in their financial information over the past few years.
Yeah, catch us up on that. What is it that they were doing?
Well, and this goes back to the history of the Turnpike Authority in general. They have for years and years and years, when they've proposed a new turnpike to be built, they hire a firm that goes in and does an analysis, makes a prediction as to how much traffic will be using these new turnpikes to be built. And based on those projections, then they sell bonds in order to build the turnpikes. Now, the turnpikes are not paid for by any taxpayer money. There is a little bit of tax money that goes from the motor fuel tax to the Turnpike Authority, but the vast majority of all the money that goes into the turnpike is tolls that are paid for by you and I that drive on those toll roads. So what happens is they make a projection as to how much traffic, i.e. how much the tolls will be coming into these new turnpikes. And based on those figures, they sell bonds in the open bond market to finance the turnpikes. Well, throughout the history of the Turnpike Authority, those figures that have been projected have only lived up to 63% of the amount. That's across the board. Some of the turnpikes, well, 3 of the 11 do fine. The rest of them don't. But those turnpikes have not lived up to their projections. So consequently, they're not making enough money individually. The individual turnpikes are not making enough money to pay for their operations, their maintenance, and to pay off the debt. That's why the Turner Turnpike has never been paid off, is because a number of years ago, the legislature allowed what's called cross-pledging. That means, like, for example, the excess money that the Turner Turnpike makes can go to prop up the turnpikes that aren't making enough money to take care of themselves. According to the original authorization, the Turner Turnpike was supposed to have become a free road after all the bonds have been paid off. But surprisingly, 70 years later, those bonds still haven't been paid off because, yeah. So that doesn't seem right to me, but nonetheless, that's what they're doing. And now they want to build 3 new turnpikes through Cleveland County. And again, I think the main reason they're wanting to propose these new turnpikes is to have the perception that there's going to be new toll money coming in to justify a new bond issuance when the bonds basically are going to pay off the bonds that they can't pay off now. They're just kicking the can down the road. I've had some legislators use the word Ponzi scheme when they've heard about this.
And, the thing that I am so impressed with is this is East Norman primarily, and Indian Hills Road as well, that comes off of I-35 and goes east. I mean, it goes both ways, but you know what I mean. And the people that live out there, the Eastern Loop was presented to them years ago, and they challenged it, the people in that area. And Neil McCaleb at the time said, well, if the people don't want it, let's don't build it. Okay, so they abandoned it.
Yes.
Now,
that is correct.
It's come back mysteriously all of a sudden. Do you know why it came back mysteriously?
Well, like I just said, Gwen, I think part of the reason is because they need to generate some new bonds to pay off the bonds they can't pay off now.
Yeah, they needed money.
Yes, they need money. In fact, in one of their recent agendas for their Turnpike Authority meeting, they mentioned, and I'd have to look it up. I don't have that right in front of me, but they mentioned that they were going to pay off some bonds that were coming due in 2023 with new bonds that would be issued in 2023. So now they're locked out of the bond market because of the lawsuits, because of the audit, and also I think because of some of the legislative efforts that our group have been pursuing and quite successful with. In fact, if you want to talk about that, I'm pleased right now to announce that House Bill 2263 just passed the Senate. It passed the House a few weeks ago. Actually, it passed the House by an 89-3 margin, and it just passed the Senate, I believe it was Tuesday of this past week, by a 41-2 margin. Both overwhelming majorities that could hold up for an override of a veto if the governor decides to veto it. Of course, he's been on a veto terror the last few days.
I was relieved, though, that it started in the House and then went to the Senate. So now, it's not a Senate bill, it's a House bill. So I was happy with that. Yes.
Enough, it passed the Senate on Tuesday, I believe, and it was amended in committee. So if it had been unamended and passed in the Senate, then it would have gone to the governor.
We dodged that bullet.
We're grateful that it didn't governor yet.
Yes.
It's still got to get by his desk.
Randy Carter is here. Randy, I need to pause for the news, but when we come back, we'll pick up this discussion. He is the Director of Strategic Communications for Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. And there's more to this story, and that's why the AG got involved. You're listening to 1000 KTOK, and you can find a lot of interesting reading on their Facebook page, No More Turnpikes. So, Randy, one of the other things we talked about, the Kickapoo Turnpike not having as many cars as they projected and not bringing in the tolls. But also the other one that caught my eye was the Gilcrease Turnpike, where those people in those areas were not told it was going to turn into a toll road. And so to get home, they can either drive way out of the way or they can pay a toll to get on the turnpike. Don't you think it's stuff like that got the Attorney General's attention?
Yes, absolutely. And I do know that a group from up in the Berry Hill area, which is the area that's most directly affected by that Gilcrease Turnpike, has had some meetings with the Attorney General as well. And I don't know specifically any details of that, but I do know that they have been pursuing some options as well for hopefully some relief on their part. I used to do. I used to go out to the Berry Hill area every so often, and back in my show business days, to their elementary school, and it was pretty. It's pretty challenging to get back in there. I mean, it's a nice secluded area, but now the only main road in and out that they had to get to Tulsa, and Berry Hill's not an incorporated community. It's there's a school system there, a nice school system, one elementary through 12th grade, but the road, their main access to and from Berry Hill to get to Tulsa and the areas in that area was they widened it and made it a better road, but then they turned it into a toll road. So yes, they're quite upset about that, and I certainly can't blame them that they've basically started charging those people to be able to go to and from work. And as I understand it, it's a very short turnpike leg in there, is probably the highest cost per mile of any turnpike in the country.
Oh,
now,
wow.
Don't quote me on. I believe that to be the case, but I'm not. That's an unqualified statement on my part.
You can't make a cheap turnpike. I mean, it's just not possible. Even the 2-lane turnpikes ended up costing millions.
Oh yeah, they went way over budget.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Move Forward program that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority projected, which I think included the Kickapoo, was again, these are from my memory of the best numbers. It was projected to come in at about $825 million, if I remember correctly, and it ended up costing $1.5 billion. So, and that's another area that is somewhat of a concern for us. The Turnpike Authority seems to have the habit of bidding, taking bids on contracts. And then those almost entirely those contracts come back, and they have to have increases on those contracts after they've been bid and the work has been ensuing. And as I understand it, that's not necessarily a very common practice in the engineering world. It's unique to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
Well, and one of my favorite turnpike stories is, do you remember the Bucking Bridge on the Kilpatrick Turnpike? If you took the Kilpatrick around and to try to go like from Tulsa to I-40, and you took the Kilpatrick over by Yukon, there was literally a bridge that when your car went over it, you felt like you were on a bucking bronco. Now, that's terrible. But guess what?
Yes,
they used that same design on a bridge in Tulsa, and they had to replace them both. Yes. So
interesting.
There.
Interesting.
That's my scream for tonight. Okay.
Okay. Well,
no more
got
scream.
that out of your. Well, interestingly enough, I don't know if you're familiar with the LOFT, the Legislative Office of Fiscal Transparency in the Oklahoma State government. They just released a report recently that talked about how different state agencies are circumvent the purchasing guidelines and the procedures by using exemptions. So basically what they're talking about is they're not using regular guidelines or proper procedures for their purchases. And I believe things are supposed to be bid in a certain way. I've over my years, I've off and on worked for the state and am mildly familiar of the bidding process that has to go out. Well, in this LOFT report, they listed about 25 different agencies and the amount of money that they had spent not going through these approved guidelines or procedures and by using exemptions to the processes. Surprisingly enough, the Department of Transportation was at the top of the list of these 25 or 26 agencies, and their part of the amount of money spent is 66.12% of all the money spent by every state agency combined. They spent $1.3 billion in using not approved guidelines for their purchasing.
Circumventing the procedures.
That's what the report states.
Wow.
Circumventing purchasing guidelines and procedures by using exemptions. The agency the second highest agency was the Department of Corrections, and their total money spent was $158 million. That was only 7.7% of the total of misspent money. Again, the Transportation Department, of which the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is a part, $1.3 billion, or 66% of the money that was spent in the state, not using proper guidelines.
That's amazing, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it is
Yes.
truly how they have gotten away with this all these years. You know, if they hadn't picked on a group of dedicated, very smart citizens of Cleveland County, this could have gone on for a long, long time. But they
Yes,
picked
that's
on
true.
the wrong people. They picked on attorneys and college-educated people and people that had chosen that part of Cleveland County to build their family homes, you know, forever and legacy and all that. And by the way, how did the plant sale go? Because I understand you all were raising money to afford your legal fees.
That's true, and the legal fees do mount up. But luckily, we have a very supportive group of people that are making. Many people are making regular monthly donations to the cause, and if anybody does want to do that, I'll put in a plug. You can go to pikeoffota.com, and there is a donation box you can click, and that would certainly be greatly appreciated. Okay, enough of the commercial.
Well, I think that's a good commercial.
The plant sale was very successful. We raised quite a bit of money, and also we did a lot of outreach. There are a lot of people that didn't know about the Turnpike specifically, and we were able to help educate them. And the more people know about this, the more opportunity we have to put this to a stop, or to make the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority play by the rules and follow the procedures that they're supposed to follow.
Okay, I've got to take another commercial break, but please answer this question when we come back. How is it that Tim Gatz can be the head of the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority when others in the state cannot have double appointments? And before we went to the break, I misspoke. I think this is what you were going to correct me on, Randy Carter, that Tim Gatz is the State Transportation Secretary, who is also the director of both the State Transportation Department and the State Turnpike Authority, and is paid more than every elected state official and most appointed state agency directors. Is that what you were going to correct me on?
Yes, you're close to what I was going to talk about. Exactly. Yes. He's wearing three hats. And if you remember just recently, the Attorney General was asked, I believe, by Greg Treat, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, if it was legal or reasonable, I don't remember the exact term, as to whether the education superintendent, State Superintendent of Education, Ryan Walters, who was also serving at the time as Secretary of Education, if that was legal for him to hold both of those positions. And I believe the Attorney General came back with a ruling that no, that was not legal. He could not hold both of those positions. So I would think the same standard would hold true for the Secretary of Transportation, the Department of Transportation, and the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
Somewhere I heard, though, that maybe under some governor's administration, he was able to combine the Department of Transportation and the Turnpike Authority.
Well, they technically are not combined. They are two separate agencies, as I understand it. Now, I could be wrong. But we possibly think that by him holding those three positions, that they're violating the trust agreement that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is required by law to operate under.
Yes. So I hope that, and I've seen, and the reason I ask you the question is I've seen this question asked many times by many people. And so if, it seems like that someone would care about that.
Yes, I think you're right, and I think there are some people that are caring and are going through the proper steps to find out the answer to those questions. But if you'll notice that in the news, right after that ruling was, or that opinion, I guess it was an opinion by the Attorney General, Gettner-Drummond said, no, that is not appropriate. Then the governor appointed somebody else to be Secretary of Education in the cabinet.
Yes,
So,
he had to do that. So that's why I was wondering how can this not come? How come somebody important other than me hasn't asked that question? That's the thing.
Well, you're important enough to know the answer, that's for sure. I think that it just needs to be asked of the Attorney General. It may be one of those things that he's not required, or I don't know how it works specifically. I'm quite new to all these governmental processes, but I'm a fast learner, and we're learning quite a bit. I think it'll be addressed with the Attorney General here fairly soon as to what can be done and what needs to be done about that. But interestingly enough, in reading the trust agreement that the Turnpike Authority operates under, under Section 706, it says that the purpose that a chief executive, the duties are imposed on the chief executive by this agreement to employ a person of suitable executive and managerial experience who shall devote his entire time to the performance of such duties. So right there in the trust agreement, it says that the chief executive officer of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority needs to devote his entire time to the performance of the duties required by the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
Yes.
So there, that seems to me that that's a violation of the trust agreement, that he is not devoting full time to the performance of such duties, if indeed he is serving as Secretary of Transportation and the head of ODOT, or Oklahoma Department of Transportation.
Well, for people that find this topic fascinating, I would encourage them to join your Facebook page and your website and your organization, because in reading today, as of April 26th, I read on your page, Oklahoma is the latest U.S. state to explore the potential of pay per mile in collaboration with Emovis, one of the world's leading providers of sustainable toll-based mobility solutions. So ODOT has signed up to do a pilot program where they will charge you per mile.
That is correct.
Yes. What do you know about this?
I don't know a lot about it. I know that that's something that they have been, they've talked about it a few times in their Turnpike Authority meetings that I've been attending for the past year or so. Yes. Well, what's happening to their way of thinking, as cars get more and more fuel efficient, they are not generating as much of the gas tax, the motor fuel tax that goes to pay specifically for the roads and highways. And also with the advent of electric cars, there's no motor fuel tax on those cars. So,
gotcha.
So they are projecting a downturn in revenue. I mean, it certainly makes sense to me that they're pursuing avenues to make sure they have adequate funding, because I mean, we all want good roads. I mean, that's one of the things that many of us cuss daily on our drives is the state, is the conditions of our roads and highways. And you know, a lot of times we don't know whether it's the city's responsibility, the counties, or the states, or the feds for that matter. We just know we want good roads. So, I mean, I can see their perspective that they want to come up with ways to finance and keep the roads in good shape. I think there'll be a lot of pushback from public on the idea of trying to bill people per mile. I'm assuming what they'll do is some of the information I've seen, it looks like they'll put some kind of a transponder in your car, and every time you get on a road, the tally starts adding up, and then you get a bill. A little bit like the way the Pike Pass works, or when you go through those transponders on the Turnpike.
Yes.
Interesting enough, the collection rate by the Turnpike Authority is, I believe the last figure I saw is at about 50% of the people that go through those transponders, which
really?
is not very good. Well, it's not near what you would hope it would be.
Well, and the
So
the plate pay is double what your sticker on your windshield is. So
yes,
yeah,
that is it's significantly more, and I think it varies turnpike to turnpike. And we also in some open records requests, we found a chart that showed the proposed turnpike increase of 10% across the board in 23, and I believe a 6% increase on either an every other year or a yearly basis on into perpetuity. So they are actively talking about increasing the tolls on a regular basis.
As our cars become more efficient or they become electric. That's amazing, isn't it? Oh, my.
Yes.
Well, I
That
thank
is
you
amazing.
so much, and I hope you will keep us up to date. Again, how do people see your updates? What's the best way to see you talking to them?
I publish my little video chat about once a week, once every other week. It's kind of become periodic now, and I've got one coming due. Go to the No More Turnpikes Facebook page, and I believe all you need to do is like it, and then it'll come up on your feed on a regular basis. Also, I have it on I put it on my feed, and I believe it goes on to Pike Off OTA's Facebook page as well. I'm not as familiar with that one as I am the No More Turnpikes, but the No More Turnpikes is the main page that I use to publish those video chats.
And it gives you a really good education on upcoming things. Randy Carter, thank you as always for your time on a Sunday night. I appreciate you.
Oh, Gwen, my pleasure. As always. I enjoy our little talks, so please, I look forward to the next one.
Thank you so much. Randy Carter, again, is the Director of Strategic Communication for the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation. And this pay per mile is coming. You also heard him say that there's a proposal to raise the tolls on the turnpikes in 23 to raise it 10%, and then periodically after that 6%. We need to stay on top of this stuff, and we're just lucky for us that the Turnpike Authority picked on a really smart, savvy group of Oklahomans who care and would devote time and money to make sure that they are doing the right things. Thank you all for listening. Good night, everybody.